The house has been severely damaged at the rear of the property, so we're probably saying about 60 or 70% of the house has been damaged by fire.
Just when it seemed all the focus was on the future of the Newcastle train line and whether to cut it at Wickham, the idea of a very fast train has reappeared. Federal Newcastle MP Sharon Grierson says the city needs to start planning for an expected population boom, and she's urged the Reece government to consider submitting transport proposals.
That would include the fast train to Sydney. It would also include the options of light rail to link our city in ways that are going to stand us in good stead for the future, for our future growth.
But plans for a very fast train have never been submitted to the federal government's Infrastructure Australia body, and they also haven't been included in the state government's blueprint for the next decade. The Hunter Business Chamber says civic leaders should therefore focus on transport projects more likely to come to fruition, like the Glendale Interchange and the future of the inner city rail.
They're the sorts of things that politicians should be addressing. They're the priorities that businesses identified and the community have identified as well as what they want to see sorted out.
And Mr Shinnick says considering the price tag for a very fast train could be $15 to $20 billion, that money would be better spent elsewhere.
No one is going to say that we shouldn't have a very fast train to Sydney or that we should have a light rail system in the Hunter. The practicalities are that those projects aren't affordable. So let's focus on what projects are affordable.
Kate Mitchell, NBN News.
The car park was full and there wasn't a lot of room inside. Woolworths Swansea had opened its doors and it was making a song and dance about it.
No, we didn't expect this sort of reaction. We're happy with it.
197 jobs have been created from a record 3,000 applications. The New Age Centre runs on gas and even has sensor lights. Shoppers say competition is just what the suburb needs.
It's got to be a boost for us.
It might start getting on the move again. Good for the town, good for everyone, yeah.
Because it was an eyesore for so long, this is beautiful.
But the Swansea Business Chamber is not happy about the rundown buildings on either side of the entrance. It's currently working with council on a master plan for the main street.
Whether it's just a repaint and refurbishment, but something to try and lift the whole streetscape back up and get rid of that old derelict or neglected look that Swansea has had for so long.
Woolworths isn't the only thing likely to pop up in Swansea over the next couple of years. The state government is pushing ahead with plans to develop these mangroves on the northeastern side of the bridge. Adverts will appear next month calling for developers to come up with a plan for the Crown land. That could include restaurants and a marina. Nat Wallace, NBN News.
Despite the much publicised dangers of cigarettes and alcohol, adults and teenagers continue to abuse them. But Associate Professor John Wiggers believes he may have the key to reducing that problem. He's been awarded $1.4 million to lead an intervention trial in secondary schools.
We thought it would be a good idea to see whether we can stop the kids taking up these behaviours in the first place, and hence we're looking at them while they're in school.
The trial will involve students from 12 schools across the Hunter, where the curriculum will be changed to include classes aimed at improving students' mental health so they can make better choices. It's a new approach based on Professor Wiggers' belief that conventional education about the dangers of smoking and drugs isn't very effective.
A new theory or a new approach, which is if we can strengthen our kids in terms of their self-esteem, their cooperation skills, their communication skills, their empathy, that there's some evidence to suggest that that might well be effective in reducing their substance use later on.
So far, the idea seems promising. A pilot program using 3 high schools recorded substantial reductions in the rate of smoking and alcohol use in Year 10 students. Professor Wiggers and his team will receive the funding in the next couple of months and hope to start the new program early next year. Kate Mitchell, NBN News.
Well, you know, I'm standing here and I shouldn't be. If I'd been born before all this happened, I'd be dead by now. So it's essential. It's absolutely essential. And that key contact when you first start treatment is your breast care nurse.
In just his second season in England, Clint Newton is now rated as one of Super League's best. Having signed a new 4-year contract, the 28-year-old helped Hull to 4th on the ladder before earning a place in the Dream Team as one of the 2 best second rowers in the competition.
I never really heard of the Dream Team until I got named in it, and then you know, to see the sort of players that I got named alongside, and also to be picked alongside Matt Gidley was, you know, special for me.
Despite his success in the UK,
Clint Newton, one of the form players in Super League this year.
Clint's thoughts are never far from home.
And I'd just like to say good day to everyone back in Australia, my parents, my grandma and all the boys in Newcastle.
The forward made a much publicised departure from the Knights in 2007, with then coach Brian Smith claiming Newton wasn't part of the club's plans. Newton disagreed with the coach's methods and says recent revelations contained in Danny Badiris' book show he wasn't alone.
And maybe it might be a little bit clearer what was going on, but in saying that, you know, where the club is at the moment, you know, I'm really looking forward to watching Rick Stone do a great job.
That coaching change means Newton's dream of finishing his career in Newcastle could be a reality when his time in England is up.
Some people, you know, may not like that idea, but, you know, for me personally, who knew everything that happened, you know, not everyone knows what happened and went on. And, you know, I would like to come back and finish on the right note.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. Branko Kalina was a relieved man at the end of this morning's session, with Adam Depuzo, Tarek Elrich and Ben Kantarovski all fit enough to claim a seat on the flight to Brisbane.
Yeah, I had a training run with the youth team last night, sort of get back into the swing of things, and today again with the team, and it wasn't feeling too bad out there. Sort of the heat wasn't too bad today, which is a good sign.
We've left a couple of players behind. One was Sean Rooney, who unfortunately picked up a virus overnight, and he's just not right to take it. It's too much of a risk, particularly with the heavy schedule that we've got.
Kantarovski has a heavier schedule than most, dividing his time between the Jets, the young Socceroos and HSC exams. The coach is yet to decide whether the youngster will play against the Raw, given he sits another test in Brisbane tomorrow.
Yeah, it's not the most ideal situation to be in, but you got to do what you got to do, I say.
Kantarovski will join one of his Raw rivals in the young Socceroos camp in Sydney on Monday. 17-year-old Tommy Orr will also be missed by his club.
From our point of view, it'd be great to have them around, but I do know it's good for their development. You know, young players need to get exposed to different kinds of conditions and challenges.
Sitting in equal last with the Jets, the Raw will be happy to win any old how tomorrow night after playing well and losing to Sydney last week.
We didn't get the 3 points, which is the most important thing, so we've got to try and correct that on Friday night.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
This is where Sue Welsh lost her life. Her memorial, the 10th in 12 years at Harpers Hill. Still, the New England Highway black spot remains unchanged.
I would have been happier if the RTA had been quicker to move, but I understand community consultation's been part of the hold-up there.
Residents such as Bob Kerr agree.
I think they've been told that they have to talk to us, they listen to us, but there's certainly been no action taken as a result of what they've heard from us, in my opinion.
All of the fatalities have occurred pretty much from this point down and around the bottom corner. Now, the RTA's solution is to put a barricade down the middle of the road. Many residents feel that's not a good solution.
If anything, it'll cause more problems because of any wildlife crossing the road, any children crossing the road. Even if somebody does get hit up the rear, it's going to be bouncing people left, right and centre from behind them.
The RTA says the plan's not set in concrete. It's extended the consultation period for another week, but it only has until June 30 to spend a federal government grant of $1 million to help prevent further loss of life.
My concern is that we're looking at a symptom rather than a cause.
No matter which way you look at it, there's going to be another dingle up here, and I just hope it's not me and my family.
Nat Wallace, NBN News. The region's business heavy hitters gathered to usher in a big change for the Hunter Business Chamber, and it was time for Karen Howard to vacate the presidency after seeing the business community through a very difficult time given the global financial crisis. She's most proud of helping to secure funding for the Branxton F3 link. And just before handing over the reins, Ms Howard took the opportunity to make a final plea to the Reece government to make a decision on the future of the CBD sooner rather than later.
We, along with other organisations, lobbied really hard and we won $1.2 billion worth of funding for the Hunter Expressway. We encouraged the state government to release the results of the Newcastle City Centre Renewal Report.
That cause has now been passed to Junction financial broker Brett Derwin. The father of three, who's been self-employed for 15 years, says he's excited to fill the top job, but knows it will be a handful.
Well, business is facing enormous challenges, has done for the last 12 or 18 months with what's happened globally in the financial area. Business will continue to go through those sort of dramas, we think, in the next number of months.
Kate Mitchell, NBN News.
It promised plenty, and with the ribbon gone, the children wasted no time testing out the new playground. $448,000 worth of fun.
And this, of course, is all part of the government's response to the global recession. It's creating jobs, but a fantastic facility for the local community.
The playground was a joint project between the Rudd Government and Maitland Council. The focus, a healthy lifestyle. It seems the senses are all important, as well as education. Even parents can get involved.
I think we're going to be the envy of a lot of local government areas that are going to say, when do we get ours?
All of the equipment has been designed to help children with a disability.
It gives them a chance to, in ways that they may not normally be able to integrate or interact with things, they can go for it here.
Nat Wallace, NBN News.
It's a long way from our lucky country, but these children in the small Tanzanian village of Farkwa know all about the generosity of students at Newcastle Grammar School. Through World Vision's School to School program, the pupils set about raising $150,000 to build a boarding house for 200 girls.
I think we're just over 130,000 at the moment, and there's been so much generosity in the school community and the wider community.
Previously, the Farquhar children had to walk 30 kilometres each day just to get to school, something many simply couldn't do. As the money's been collected through events such as this sausage sizzle, it's been sent over to Africa to allow builders there to start constructing the boarding house. These students have been chosen to travel there in January to see where the money has gone.
I think because we're so lucky in our state of our standards of living, and we need to help out those who are less fortunate.
It's more than just, providing aid, in terms of food or supplies. It's making sure that these kids have a real chance at education and have a real chance, at a life.
Kate Mitchell, NBN News.
It's called Transparency, an epic 700-kilometre journey down the east coast. The team of 5 adventurers is following the whale migration south in mini outriggers, powered by the wind and the legs.
It's just amazing because in these little crafts, every animal comes up and checks you out, so there's a curiosity there that's really nice.
The team, who we caught up with in Stockton Bight, is raising awareness about whale protection and clean oceans. Dave Rastovich believes that so far the federal government hasn't kept good on a promise to monitor Japanese whaling in the Southern Ocean.
So this whole trip is about exposing that fact and motivating our communities so that we'll step up and pressure them into doing what they said they would do and following up with their word.
But there's more to the trip than just whales. At the end of each day, the crew lands on a secluded beach, but it doesn't like what it's found.
The most beautiful places are often the most dirty, and that's been just bizarre because you look at a place and from far it looks great and then up close it's not so good, so it's been a real surprise.
All the rubbish is catalogued, with councils being told how they can keep their beaches cleaner. Dave Rastovich has been joined by respected free surfer Chris Del Moro, who wants to take the Transparency initiative overseas.
I'd like to spread this message to the US and try to, cross the Pacific and basically just have people realize how incredible the Southern Oceans are.
The journey ends in Sydney next week. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
A former Merewether fast bowler, Michael Hogan, is making a name for himself in the West these days, impressing in his first 2 one-day matches for the Warriors. His next big test comes against his home state on Sunday in Sydney. That's where he'll clash with old Newcastle and country teammate in Bert Cockley. He'll help spearhead the Blues attack in what will be their season-opening domestic one-dayer, having impressed in the longer version of the game last season. The pair headed up Newcastle and New South Wales country's bowling attack only 2 years ago, but Sunday's match will be a clear case of state against state and mate against mate. Meanwhile, Newcastle's 2 Australian female cricket stars must wait another week before their national domestic season gets underway with the New South Wales Breakers.
Last summer was great for us, and this summer we're chasing our 5th consecutive title, so it's a really big summer for us and we're all really excited about it.
Poulton didn't really want last season to finish, considering her big year for both state and country.
Hopefully I can back that up this year. Consistency is sort of the goal for me this year, to sort of back up a good season with another good one.
The opening bat will be joined by fast bowler Sarah Andrews in the Breakers team that opens their campaign next weekend. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
When the players are doing well and the team is winning, you want to try and keep the momentum going without disrupting that situation as much as possible.
Picket line day one. The fight to save the Wallsend aged care facility from privatisation hits the streets. Protesters young and old are trying to rally more support. They'll man the facility for the next month. The plan is to keep the state government honest, and they have solid support.
We should be putting our hands up and saying how brilliant a hospital is that makes people happy, that the residents praise so highly. How often does that happen in New South Wales?
The people who live in this facility are real people who need certainty, who need a place to stay, and the uncertainty that they're going through now is cruel, very cruel.
The Health Minister maintains care levels won't drop if the Wallsend aged care facility is privatised, but there's still no long-term guarantee.
If it does proceed, who's going to back it up? Who's going to put their hand up and say, something's gone wrong, let's fix it?
Bruce and Carol Bailey's son James has been a patient here for 2 years after a car accident.
We can leave him now, walk away knowing that he's getting the best full care that he can. We go home and sleep at night.
The protesters want the government to revisit an agreement signed in the 90s when the site's hospital closed.
To us it meant that we'd always have it, and it just looks like they're going back on it all the time.
Nat Wallace, NBN News.
Mentally, they tell you you need to accept the new normal. You know, I'm standing up. I just need to embrace who I am now and how I can get on with it. And if my bike's my best friend, so that's certainly helped me through, and hopefully it'll help others through.
The Jets will get to know Williamtown Airport pretty well this week, given they've got 3 games in 10 days. Arriving home from Brisbane today with a competition point, there was a feeling they should have packed all 3.
They didn't have much. I mean, they had a penalty in the first half, and second half, I can't remember if they had any really good chances.
Halidi is making the most of his. A 3rd goal in as many games got Newcastle off to the right start. The lead-up underlining a striking partnership up front for Newcastle. However, some old issues at the back also reared its head. Defender Adam DePuzzo cornered for a handball in the box. A 5th booking this season, he's now suspended, but it was young keeper Ben Kennedy back in the crosshairs too. It set up Sergio Van Dijk from the spot from which he converted. And from there, neither side could find a winner. Newcastle heads across the Tasman on Monday without young gun Ben Kantarovski either, who now has national commitments.
Time is ticking to get work started on the redevelopment of Number 2 Sports Ground. Something has to be done at the site before the middle of next year in order to qualify for $2 million worth of federal funding. On Tuesday, Newcastle Council will consider approving up to $40,000 for specialist planning advice to get the project moving.
$40,000 seems a lot of money, but in a $5 million project, it's not a great deal of money if you compare it with building a house, for example. So we need to get those early aspects correct.
The $5 million project will include a dedicated rugby union field, concourse seating and a grandstand catering for about 5,000 people. Along with it, a 300-space car park on the corner of Smith and Parry Streets, which will be open 7 days a week. It's this car park that Councillor Tate says will open up a range of opportunities, including the first genuine park and ride space.
There's a lot of pressure coming onto Cooks Hill to see parking restrictions extended into those residential areas. Well, this will eliminate that, and it will also provide the opportunity for people to park their car, walk down to Hunter Street and get the free bus.
The car park will also provide the opportunity for money to be earned all year round, along with proposed commercial areas at the ground. Kate Mitchell, NBN News.
The message is the industry, it needs awareness. There is obviously a lot of rat bags out there, and we're just trying to do the right thing and get everybody back in line.
A New Zealand international himself, Ivan Tuamavavi, is keeping an eye on the Four Nations, but his heart is set on doing well in a city he already enjoys.
My first ever game in Australia back when I was 16 was here, and I played my test here last year, so it's a bit of a coincidence, but you know, it's a beautiful place.
Debuting with the Warriors in 2004, the big forward was a team regular until last season. He was forced to overcome a career-threatening neck problem, but a knee injury followed, limiting him to just 6 games. And despite an offer to remain in Auckland, he opted for a change. Recruited by the now former Knights coach Brian Smith, he had no problems in fulfilling a deal once he left, but cracking a starting spot may prove a little tougher, with the likes of Ben Cross and Dan Toller also returning from season-ending injuries.
When they signed me, I sort of thought, oh, where am I going to fit in here? But you know, I'm coming over here, you know, to earn my spot and earn the respect of all the other boys.
He'll meet some of those tomorrow as training resumes this week. Meanwhile, Junior Sau's Four Nations campaign continues to go well, scoring his second try in as many games for New Zealand in their comprehensive win over France.
Wesley Mission is a one-stop charity shop for people in need. Unfortunately, business is too good, especially as we approach the Christmas period.
All you need is one person in that family to maybe get ill or lose employment. It's only 2 or 3 weeks down the track and you know, the bank manager starts knocking on the door and asking questions.
Client manager Tony Scully says last year's economic stimulus package offset some of the heartache heading into summer. But this year, more people will struggle to provide their families with a Merry Christmas.
That helped a lot of people get through this time, whereas this year that stimulus package isn't on offer. So people are now coming to places like this to ask for help.
Wesley employs just 5 permanent staff at its Newcastle office, and a lack of resources has seen it turn away up to 30 needy people a day. The service also believes those less fortunate are coming into Newcastle from regional areas. But emergency accommodation here is in short supply. Most people end up on a waiting list for 6 to 9 months, and whole families are sometimes left in limbo.
Probably near 20 people a day come and ask for assistance with some type of accommodation. Unfortunately, we really can only help the single adult.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
It's not often the announcement of an extra bus service comes with a ribbon cutting. This new $460,000 bus will conduct 4 return trips between Newcastle train station and Williamtown, catering for airport passengers on popular early morning and evening flights. The earliest service will leave Newcastle at 4:30 a.m. and cost $5.
Given that the airport is running jets that have 177 seat capacity leaving at 6 o'clock in the morning, I think there is very big demand, and people are always looking for cost-effective ways to get to the airport.
The last bus will depart the airport at 9:50 p.m. to work in with the last plane. And considering Williamtown is the fastest growing regional airport in Australia, there is a clear demand for extra transport options.
These additional 4 services have been targeted at the big jets so that there is plenty of transport available for people using Newcastle Airport.
Not everyone wants to park on site, not everyone wants to travel by car and leave their car here. It is expensive, so it's important that we're able to provide that option.
The extra services will only operate on weekdays and bring the total number to and from the airport to 16. Port Stephens Coaches says it'll monitor the situation closely with the option of extending some services to weekends. Kate Mitchell, NBN News.
A picture-perfect day on the Hunter River signalled the start of the prawn season, and for several fishermen it was a happy hunting ground.
But some boats have done well, some boats I say are a bit less, but they all seem to be smiling and happy today, so it's all good.
Last year the season started poorly on the 1st of December, but this year the owners of the 27 boats authorised to trawl the river voted to start a month earlier. Some, however, want the season to coincide with the start of daylight saving to take advantage of the demand that comes with warmer weather.
That was one of the reasons the guys wanted to try and get in, so that people knew where they could source their product from.
To ensure the local product remains viable, hunter fishermen have volunteered to impose a prawn count. They say it's all about sustaining the industry.
If diesel prices are down, and they're down a bit this year, it is more viable for us to work, but access is our greatest thing. We need access to become viable.
And even the spirit of giving started early, with one fisherman donating a kilo of prawns to this Raymond Terrace Probus group. The most important question, how do they taste? Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
He hasn't played in a month, but former Socceroo Lubo Milicevic boarded the team bus today to begin the trip across the Tasman. It followed his first full training session, and while his heel hasn't fully healed, Branko Kalina only wanted to hear one thing today.
All I'm interested in, all I know is that he's put his hand up and wants to play, and that's a good sign.
It's a sign of the times at the Jets. Tarek Elrich has played all season with groin problems.
I probably should have had an operation a couple of months ago, but, you know, I just can't sit there and watch my boys play and not be involved.
For the coach, the real issues aren't physical, and he reminded the team of that today.
Nothing wrong with the football, nothing wrong with the organisation, just simply that mental toughness, will to win at all costs that the players have to realise.
The captain admits he'd prefer to get his future settled sooner rather than later, but contract talks must take a back seat to the job at hand. Given the close nature of the competition, a big win on Wednesday could see the Jets catapult back into the top six.
We can't be sitting here in 8 weeks, 6 points out and saying the same thing, so eventually it has to be done.
Donny de Groot and Jason Hoffman join the squad, but the final lineup won't be clearer until another session in New Zealand tomorrow. Jim Callanan, NBN News. The stable favourite has been enjoying good luck kisses for days. There's no doubting the place Newport holds in the hearts of this group, and that's not always a good thing.
I feel like I'm going to have a stroke every time he runs down the straight, but it's a good party.
How about if he wins it? A thought running rampant in the minds of owners.
Many sleepless nights and just getting into the race, you know, it takes a lot of effort, and we're there now.
Yep. Every owner's dream to have a runner in the Melbourne Cup and to do it 2 years in a row. It's fantastic.
We're hoping so.
I think so.
It might be a little surprise.
Yeah, we're always confident.
And Newport's giving every reason to be. His finish in Sunday's McKinnon Stakes over 2,000 metres showed he'll see out the 2 Mile Classic, no troubles.
It's exactly what he needed to top him up for this race, and he's pulled up well after it, so it's all to now all systems go.
After dropping 6.5 kilos for the Cup, the weight of expectation has only grown.
There's no reason why he can't win, that's for sure. Yeah. He's a big chance.
And it's great for the local people too. We get a lot of support from people from our town.
A good reason to go black and gold for the grey tomorrow.
And that's where we want to focus the improvements to make them so much a better environment, more interesting for the kids.
They've travelled across and down under, a month-long Winnebago wander, taking their puzzle prowess to country New South Wales. The Lovetts produced 20 publications, a crossword empire built letter by letter.
I used to make crosses with my dad just as a hobby, so that's how I learned how to do that. But I didn't think of doing that as a career.
A one-off job writing a crossword for a magazine changed all that, and 30 years later, Christine and James are still, well, puzzling.
Do you still do the puzzles?
Yeah, oh yes. Yes, so not quite to the obsessive degree that Christine does. She won't go off to bed without solving a few puzzles.
I wouldn't say I'm obsessive, but I do like, yes, the challenge of doing maybe an Sudoku, which is a form of Sudoku, and a cryptic crossword before I go to sleep.
And it's reassuring to know that even the gurus sometimes get stuck.
God, they're hard, these puzzles.
Yeah, who made these puzzles? They're terrible.
It might not always feel like it, but the Lovetts reckon this kind of mental aerobics is good for you.
Well, it's entertaining to start with. I mean, it's something you can have fun with. But from the health point of view, we've been more and more aware recently of just how good mental workouts are for people.
And as they wind up the Bush Bash, Christine is already working on a new batch of cryptic crosswords.
I sometimes think I've got a few wires hanging out in there, loose wires. I don't know if it's good for me, but I think it's good for people solving it anyway.
There were no horses on the track, but that didn't stop anyone heading to Broadmeadow for Cup Day.
And this party's been building to about 450 this year, and every year it gets bigger and better.
It was all about fashion, no matter how young, but you can't have a cup without a hat. Newcastle milliner Anthea Jane Horn took the day off to watch her handiwork.
Over the last couple of months I've been working towards today, and I took today off to actually relax and have a good day myself.
She wasn't the only one relaxing. The Jets W League team also tried to find some winning form.
I have to go with my friend who had a dream, a premonition about Alcopop, so that's my tip.
Everyone becomes a punter on Cup Day. If only everyone was a winner.
Newport, it's a Newcastle horse, and it's a grey.
I really like Roman Emperor.
I really think one of the Bart Cummings horses will win.
Who knows? A Melbourne Cup's a Melbourne Cup. You can never pick a winner, really, unless we're very lucky.
Bookie Frank Marks saw most of the money.
It's like Valentine's Day to a florist. Melbourne Cup is a very big day for bookmakers all around the country.
And if 4 legs weren't your fancy, why not try a few more? It was hardly the race that stops the nation, but at least you got to eat your mount. Nat Wallace, NBN News.
While the houses around it are all gone, the home that Bert Gambrell built 60 years ago still stands. He refused to sell to Woolworths to make way for a new shopping centre, and he and his son won't even let builders erect scaffolding on his garden to allow the side wall of the centre to be completed. The situation wound up in court today, with solicitors for Woolworths applying for an order that would allow scaffolding on Bert's side of the fence. But the case had to be adjourned because Bert took a tumble at the weekend and wound up in hospital. Woolworths offered the 97-year-old $600,000 for the land. He and his son said it wasn't enough.
Multinational companies, if you want it, pay the man out, give him a lifestyle and let him spend the rest of his life happy and contented.
Most people would have some sympathy for an elderly gentleman who's lived there for many years and then finds everything changing around him. The reality, however, is that the land was zoned for that type of commercial retail use in the 1950s.
Woolworths told NBN News today it would prefer to settle out of court to prevent any further delays in construction. The sad part about this story is that due to Bert's age and health problems, he's unlikely to ever move back into the house that he's fought so hard to protect. At Morisset, Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The federal government's insulation rebate has been cut from $1,600 to $1,200. John Mercer from Hunter Insulation says the decision caught the entire industry by surprise. He says there's 800 customers on his books alone still waiting for insulation, and at least half of those will be forced to pay the extra $400.
We have people at this stage who are booked as far away as February because of the lack of stock. Our main problem is at this stage that the bulk of the people we are talking to are mums and dads, retired people and things like that, and a lot of them are going to miss out.
The federal government argues the move will improve competition in the industry, but Mr Mercer disagrees.
I think through the industry there's a lot of people going to lose their jobs, and I suspect a lot of companies are going to close because of this.
Mr Mercer says he's written emails to Environment Minister Peter Garrett and has also contacted local MPs.
What we're asking at this stage that government allow us to install the contracts that we have got on the books now as quickly as we possibly can without a time limit, so that those agreements that we have made and those deals that we've made can be honoured.
Meanwhile, the Insulation Council of Australia is urging the government not to reduce the rebate any further, saying that would risk jobs and millions in investment. Lauren Bladwell, NBN News. Who could forget this big beer ad? Or a commercial where the catchphrase became part of the Australian dialect. Paul Middleditch had a hand in both.
Bring something to it, bring some ideas and a sense of humour, which is, I suppose, what I'm known for, making things funny.
Mr Middleditch has also worked in Europe and the US, where he's directed more than 7 Super Bowl commercials.
And that's great. A lot of people get to see them, 850 million people or whatever. So there's always a bit of pressure, but it's fun.
He also has 3 feature films on his showreel. The latest, Separation City, will be released early next year. The director says he is excited about the industry, and today he told acting students at Hunter TAFE that's the key to his success.
To be excited about what they're doing and to be committed, it's hard work, and to, I suppose, enjoy it and embrace it.
The students keen to pick the director's brains.
We know most of those ads, and it's a funny thing that when you meet the person that actually directed those ads, it gives you a new aspect to them.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
In previous seasons, the trip to New Zealand was rarely seen as a daunting task, but this year the Phoenix is unbeaten at home and has claimed some impressive scalps, including a 6-0 win over the Gold Coast. Add 3 former Jets to the mix in Tim Brown, Troy Hearfield and grand final star Andrew Durante, and the battle of the cellar dwellers has become a lot more interesting. The Jets have let several leads slip this season, something they're keen to address in Wellington.
That's what they've been doing the whole year, is come from behind. So look, we have to make sure that we play for 90 minutes, simple as that.
Branko Kalina has several decisions to make in defence, with Ben Kantarovski away with the young Socceroos and Adam DePuzzo suspended. Speaking to NBN before leaving for Wellington, Captain Matt Thompson said if required, he's happy to fill one of those spots.
Look, mate, I've just got to concentrate on my own game, and if he says to play keeper, then I'll have a quick session in the gloves with the gloves on before the game. So, now look, it's just one of those things, mate, that where you put, you have to perform.
But Branko Kalina believes striker Jason Hoffman could also be ready for a change.
I think with his athletic ability and his technical ability, he could be an ideal player in that role.
The coach is looking for a minimum of 4 points from the next 2 games.
It's the race day that stops Muswellbrook. Each year there's a half-day holiday so everyone can watch the town's premier equine event.
It's 12 o'clock. I think the shops are probably just closing now, so they'll be on their way out here in droves.
And they know how to pull a one-eyed crowd.
On this same day, they run a little race down in Melbourne to coincide with our day.
Better than staying home and doing housework. Cheers.
Some were having all the luck, while on a hot day others were lucky just to find some shade. It was billed as a family fun day and those who made an effort certainly stood out. The race club pleased with the turnout.
Around about 4,000 is our normal, so if we beat that today, I'd be very, very happy.
But the race they all came to see was the Cup. Here are the closing stages.